Welcome to video 14 in our van build series. Today we're going to make our roof rack to support 3 or 4 100-watt solar panels and a future awning. We have decided not to buy a roof rack, but to make one ourselves. Right from the get-go, I want to give a big shout out to Dave from vanofaction.com. We will be using his mounting system to connect our roof rack to our 136 wheelbase Promaster. Speaking of which, that's where we're going to start this project. Let's get started. The first thing we need to do is to make our Vanofaction Promaster roof rack mounting brackets. These brackets are designed by Dave from Vanofaction. He's a carpenter out in British Columbia. Dave's design is simple, elegant, strong, and very inexpensive to make. I have provided a link to his website in the description. I encourage you to visit it. Dave's design has saved me hundreds of dollars. Here's what we're going to build. Now, for starters, we need to buy some aluminum. The entire bracket can be made from a single piece of 1/8 inch C-channel, 2 inches high with 1-inch flanges. I couldn't get that exact material in Ottawa, so I bought C-channel that was 2 inches high with 2-inch flanges and then cut it to size. The dimensions of the two finished pieces are shown here, and yes, I used both metric and standard because it seems like I'm kind of weird that way. Dave's design uses these two pieces to securely clamp onto the Promaster roof rack tabs. This secure method of installation requires no drilling into the roof of your van. Perfect. With two 3/4 inch long 1/4 inch bolts inserted, the bracket slips under the Promaster roof tab. Then we place 2 washers on each bolt. These are used as spacers. They are not the same thickness as the Promaster tab, slightly less, which is perfect because we want to clamp down on the tab very securely. Now we install the retaining flange, 2 lock washers, and 2 nuts. This completes the assembly. I'm going to be cutting aluminum, so right from the get-go I want to swap out my carpenter's blade for an old one. I don't want to wreck a good blade. You may be surprised to know that you don't have to use a chop saw, a cut-off wheel, or a hacksaw to cut aluminum. You can use a table saw, a radial arm saw, or even a compound miter saw. Today, I'm planning on using my table saw. Here is the 2-inch by 2-inch C-channel. Dave's plans call for a 2-inch C-channel with 1-inch flanges. I couldn't get that locally, so I'm cutting what I could get down to size. The old wood blade in the table saw makes easy work of this. Having said that, wow, do small, sharp, flying pieces of aluminum go flying. I was wearing safety glasses, of course, but I really needed a full-faced shield. On later cuts, not on camera, I pulled out my welding helmet and cut the aluminum while wearing that. Here I'm making, and will be cutting shortly, the 1-inch by 1-inch L angle to make the retaining flange. The ideal flange length ended up being about 11 millimeters. Having finished the long cuts, I could have removed the blade and installed it on the radial arm saw to complete the cut-to-length cuts. Instead, I just clamped a piece of cedar to the fence to continue to use the table saw to cut a dozen pieces exactly 3 inches long. This worked well and was quick and safe. Here I'm marking the slot I need to cut out to make space for the Promaster roof rack tab. Couple bolts. Oh, that's really good. And that's snug. Wow. Okay, cool. Okay, I've got a couple lines here drawn on the underside here, and essentially I'm not using the center of this face. I'm using the center of this face minus the 1/8 inch shoulder here. So if you look at it closely, you'll see that this line going across here is closer to this edge. It's actually 11 millimeters from this edge. So I'm going to be consistent on all of them, 11 millimeters. And the mark here is 14 millimeters from the outside. So 11 from the front and 14 from the side. And that's where I'm going to drill 2 1/4 inch holes. So I'll use my trusty screw here and pop in just a quick little punch. So it looks like 2 washers on each side as potential spacers. Then our cover plate, the lock washers, and that is solid. Holy crow. Hats off to Dave from Van of Action. Great job, Dave. Look here, you can see the lip is just nicely protecting it from sliding off. We got clearance down here. We have nothing touching the roof, and this is rock solid. So we have 1 bracket made. Time to do a whole bunch of filing. 6 ready for the drill press. Here I used a cleco clamp to hold the retaining flange up against the next bracket. I'm using the first retaining flange as a template to ensure all of the holes on all of the brackets are identical. This will ensure that all of the parts are interchangeable. Marking and punching the exact location of the hole which makes up the end of the ProMaster roof rack tab slot. Carefully cutting slots in the remaining 5 brackets. Using a 1/4 inch round file to finish the end of the slot. Some quick assembly to make sure everything fits. Well, end of day 1, and it wasn't a full day. I have 6 finished Van of Action brackets. Thank you, Dave. These are fantastic. Well, I've just put the 1x2 roof rack rail just on top of the first 3 brackets, and it just is perfectly lined up. These are just loose right now, but what I'm doing now is I'm trying to determine exactly where I'm going to place it, and then I'll mark it with a felt and take it back down and drill these. But I'm really impressed. The van is straight and level. I want to just point something else out. I've got a bracket here. And if you look at the back side of this, you can see that the slot in the center and the circle that it cuts into is actually further back than these 2 holes. You'll see that on my drawings. I've done that on purpose. The idea behind it was if I needed to adjust this, for example, if this bar, if the middle one was out or the far one was out, I wanted to be able to have a little bit of play in it, back and forth. And so I allowed an extra 1/16 of an inch on each one. So these can essentially, on the ProMaster tab, they could be here or they could be there or they could move back a little bit, and all of them would, all 3 positions would work well. But I've placed them all in the middle and they're all lined up. So I don't know if you need to drill this out further like I have, but on my van it appears to be straight from a manufacturing standpoint, and so I'm literally just going to take some measurements, figure out where I'm going to put this, and mark it, and then take it down and drill. using the drill press to drill all the way through the 2-inch roof rack rails, attaching the bracket to the rail for the first time. These need to be removed before installation, but I wanted to make sure my holes lined up before I got up on top of the van, marking the center of the roof rack rail for drilling. Well, let's see if this fits.
Awesome. That's two. Gotta love Canada. 40 degrees below in the winter, 40 degrees above in the summer. Oh, this is hot. One more. Oh, it's in! Oh my gosh, that is fantastic. I'm wow. So half of the roof rack is done.
After watching my video from the day before, I figured I better wash the roof of the van. Not a bad idea. One of the things I noticed while I was cleaning the roof was I had a little bit of light corrosion on the driver's side near the front roof tab. I used this as an opportunity to sand down to the bare metal and touch up this area with some trim-clad paint. Here I'm starting on the second roof rack rail. First fitting, notice the roof nice and clean. Here's a close-up of how Dave's Van of Action roof clips slide under the Promaster tabs. Super slick. Setting up the hardware for each clip on the left side of the van. Installing the second roof rack rail. Here I'm cutting a 10-foot long, 1.5-inch square tubing in half. Now these are just rough cuts. I need to cut them in half to make the material more manageable while I determine the exact length of the crossbars. Off camera, back on the table saw, I cut 16 1/8-inch thick 1-inch L angles to be used as brackets to attach the crossbars to the roof rails. Here are the basic tools that I'll be using to assemble a roof rack. Not all of these are necessary, but these simple tools will greatly improve the overall quality of your assembly. I have provided links to all of the tools within the description. From left to right, cleco pliers, A5 clecos, A4 clecos, number 20 drill bit, number 30 drill bit, A5 rivets, an edge marker block, and a rivet gun. Edge markers are super quick for setting up crosshairs 10 millimeters in from the edge of the aluminum. For some reason, my punch is always somewhere else. First holes are using the smaller number 30 drill bit, followed by an A4 cleco. We cleco the pieces together to temporarily hold the parts securely while continuing to drill. Once the pieces are aligned, we increase to the final bit size, in our case a number 20 drill bit, drilling through both pieces at the same time. This ensures the tightest tolerances and the strongest bond between the metals. Here I've moved up to an A5 cleco. Prior to final assembly, all holes must be first deburred and then reassembled. Then you remove a single cleco and insert and pull your first rivet. This connection is extremely strong.
Beauty.
I want to take a moment here to provide a real close-up to add some additional detail. Notice the pulled rivet has a domed head and the inserted rivet is flat. Watch what happens when I pull this second rivet. The head is domed. This is not necessary, although it provides a very professional finish. I'm using a concave rivet head designed specifically to round rivets. This is commonly used in aircraft manufacturing when a flush rivet is either not possible or not desirable. Again, not needed for this application, but it does do a beautiful job pulling rivets through 6061 T6 aluminum. Here are my 4 cross beams with brackets on one end. I'm only doing one end at this point. You'll see why in a minute. Okay, I need to explain what you're looking at here. We have the camera pointing at the back of the van. The 2 rails are installed, but the van of action connectors are currently loose to provide limited movement. I have clamped 2 levels, one to each rail, to ensure that they are perfectly perpendicular and parallel to each other. I have also clamped one of my 4 cross beams onto the left rail just on the inside of the rail. The cross beam itself, slightly too long, is resting on top of the right rail. Since both rails are perfectly straight and parallel to each other, all I need to do is climb the ladder and use a black Sharpie to mark the underside of the cross beam to set final length.
Okay, so I've made my first cross beam, and it appears to be, where am I here? About 57 and looks like just shy of 3/8. No, it's bang on. 57 and 3/8, I'll call it.
4 cross beams finished with brackets installed on both ends.
Cool. So I'm up on the roof, and I'm looking at the first crossbar that I just popped in. So I clamped it and drilled it and clecoed it. I haven't riveted it yet, but holy crow, is this thing solid. I just can't believe it. So this is just fantastic. I have these drilled to final size. I'm now going to remove the whole thing, deburr all holes, cleco it all up together again, and then remove one cleco and start riveting.
Here I'm using a flexible drill bit extender. With 1-inch flanges, we are working with tight tolerances, and I want to ensure that the final hole is perpendicular to the work surface. With the 4th cross beam installed, our roof rack has now been fabricated and assembled. Man, does this look good. Next, we will tighten the van of action roof clips to the Promaster tabs. To do this, I need to grind down, i.e. reduce the profile of a 7/16 wrench. Well, look what I found in my junk pile of old tools. A wrench. It probably came with a kit of some sorts a few decades back. It's not exactly the right size, but it works, so I've labeled it and added it to our van's permanent toolkit. Here I'm assembling the brackets to the solar panel and sliding the units into place. This was a fantastic project, very rewarding, and it came in at 1/4 the cost of buying a commercial unit. The entire unit, aluminum, brackets, bolts, washers, and rivets, came in right around 350 Canadian. Pretty hard to beat that. Hey, thanks for watching. With our solar panels in place, we're moving on to wiring our charging system. Cheers.